Okay, so what I thought I'd do is give a quick tutorial here on 6566 Mustang, the ignition switch to solenoid, and an explanation of the ignition start circuit with factory marked up wire diagrams and color coded with the factory wiring. I thought I'd put this together because these cars are getting pretty old and the factory wiring has been screwed with. So some people are trying to figure out if their wiring has been messed around with or return it to the original configuration or just kind of understand what it's all doing. So let's jump right in here. So what we've got here is we've got the back side of the ignition switch. We've got a replacement ignition switch harness. These these wires are actually color coded and match the factory diagram, which we will see in subsequent pages. So let's just start here. So this is an aftermarket switch. Some of you may buy this switch and say, wait a minute, what is this thing? This is a wrong switch. I'm not using it. This is an aftermarket switch, so it's got a brake warning light terminal. 6566 isn't going to use that. It's not going to cause you any harm. So, like I said, you've got each one of these wires is color coded. I won't read it word for word. You've got the legend down here at the bottom, just points to each one and then goes out to the car. Speaking of which, here's the solenoid. So here's where it gets a little confusing. I'll explain. It'll make more sense when we look at the diagram. On the positive side of the solenoid, people will look at it, and Ford kind of set up the basis of confusion here. They got a lot of yellow wires. So they got 237 wires, but they both do different things. They're black yellow. One of the 37s goes into the firewall termination, the bulkhead fitting there, and that goes into the car and supplies the car with power. That is going to transition to a number 21 wire. We'll see that in a minute. The other 37 wire is bigger. See how it's bigger? That's also black yellow. That's going to the alternator. There's a solid yellow that is going to the voltage regulator. Okay, so this number 32 wire, the red blue, you can kind of see the other stripe there. The colors fade over time. That's the 32 wire. That's going from the to the S side of the starter solenoid. That's what's cranking the engine over. Okay, so a lot of people will say, okay, what's going on with this full 12 volts to the coil? How does that work? That's the brown wire here. That's the 262 wire. Like I said, that's brown. In other slides, we're going to see more carefully how that works. So where did this all come from? It comes from the factory diagram. So some of you have probably seen this. What I've done is I've edited out unnecessary elements, and let's focus just on ignition start circuit. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful. You can see these color codes. I already mentioned some of these, the 37 and the 262 from the previous slide. So what you see here is you've got your ignition switch, and the 16 is the red-green, and it goes up to the pink factory resistance wire. So let's talk about that pink resistance wire right now, because that's a point of confusion. People will hear about this pink resistance wire. That's part of the ballast resistance system. And they'll say, I don't see a pink resistance wire under my hood. I heard it goes to the coil. I don't see it. What is going on? That is under the dash only. There is no pink wire under the hood. So we clear that up. Okay, so that pink wire transitions to the bulkhead fitting. Remember I mentioned that brown 262 wire? That's the 12 volt override, you might call it. Overrides because it's full 12 volts during crank only. And it splices into this 16 wire here and goes to the positive side of the coil. So people will say, another point of confusion, they'll look at the positive side of the coil and go, I don't see a brown wire. Where's this brown wire going? Ford did that to save wire count. It's spliced in here. We're going to look at that more closely on the next slide. I mentioned that 37 main power wire, that black yellow. it goes to the bulkhead fitting, and then someplace under the dash it transitions from black yellow to solid level 37 to wire number 21. So you remember on the previous slide, the back of that replacement ignition switch harness was solid yellow. That's correct. So let's talk about the neutral safety start. Some people will say there's something wrong with your schematic. My neutral safety start, let's say automatic, has 4 wires. The other 2 wires are for reverse lights. These are color coded, so if you're looking for them, they'll match. The neutral safety start is a simply open or close switch. When it's closed, the circuit is complete. The 32 wire will start the car. Okay, so let's look at the next slide here. Okay, pretty much the same slide, but I included this detail item for a bit of a close-up, more detailed explanation on this full 12 volts during crank to the coil. You'll see it's the 262 brown wire, so people will pop their hood and say, there's no brown wire going to my coil. Somebody's either screwed with my car or what I read is wrong. As I mentioned, it's to save wire count. So during crank only, the I side of the solenoid will send full 12 volts to the splice into the 16 wire, the red and green. That's the full 12 volts. So you should have 1 wire going to the positive side of the coil, and it will be full 12 volts at crank. When you lift off the key and you're running, it is for 65, 66, it's probably 7.5, 8 volts. Given the combination of the 1.47 ohm coil and the 1.35 together, that's called the ballast resistance system. So what's left? Okay, what I am doing to wrap up here is I'm working on an extremely comprehensive and thorough DuraSpark conversion presentation. At some point, I will put it as an end video link when I'm done with it. At this time, I'm probably around 90% done with it. And these slides will be part of my DuraSpark conversion, but I hope this helps. Any questions or comments, just drop it in there, and I'll see if I can help, and take care.